Hi, and welcome to Your Truth Explored, the podcast where we unpack your truths to bring clarity, understanding, and insight into what lies ahead. My name is Rodney Reynders. Today we are joined by Naomi Cao, a separations and divorce coach and strategist whose journey into this work began through her own lived experience. After an unexpected marriage breakdown, Naomi found herself navigating the complexities of the family law system while raising her children. What started as a personal challenge has since become a passion for helping others move through one of life's most difficult transitions with greater clarity and confidence. In this episode, we explore the emotional, practical, and psychological realities of separation, unpack common misconceptions about the legal process, and discuss how people can regain a sense of control and begin building a hopeful future after divorce. Well, Naomi, it's really great to have you here today, and it's going to be an interesting topic to unpack, so I look forward to that. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me.
Now, Naomi, we've chatted before, and you've unpacked this coaching from the perspective of the divorcee and what life looks like beyond divorce.
Yeah.
That's a path I've walked, so I'm familiar with the challenges and benefits that come with that process. But why don't you tell us how you look at that situation, and we'll see where the journey takes us.
Look, I think when you're in the what I call the separation mud, the initial phases, it's it's very messy and often you sort of like think, how the hell did I get here? With many expletive in the
In
end.
between.
You know, and so you look at it and you just think, how did I get here? The next step is probably how will I manage moving forward? I think when we connect with a partner who we choose to have children with or choose to get married with, you start to think of your future as a partnership with this particular person. And when you find yourself in that separation space, there's a lot of unknowns and it's very scary. And you start to question everything you do. You go back and you start asking, did I miss the signs? Were the
Yeah,
signs there? Or if you're the person instigating the separation, you're thinking there's a lot of guilt around that because are you
yeah,
disrupting the family network? And then afterwards, I think time does heal wounds, and you look back at it and you think, maybe it wasn't so bad. Um, and you start to look at it as it being a chapter of your life as opposed to the story that defines you. So,
yes. Yeah, I
yeah.
think that is key here. This idea of it's not my story that defines me. It's just one of the chapters. And I know for my life and even in other people's lives that I've managed to have the platform to speak into, nobody sets out intentionally to do a bad job. We all
No,
set out with the best intentions, and yes, it didn't work, and we learned some lessons. So I guess my question to you, Naomi, is when people are on the other side of this journey, sort of fresh in the fresh phase, is there grace typically towards oneself in that space, or is that something we in the mental space need to help create?
I think we in the mental health space have to help create that because I think as people come out of it, they're thinking they're a lot in survival mode,
Yes.
whether it's a parent not having as much time with the children as they would like to have, because essentially the children need times are shared between the two houses,
Yeah.
or people stuck in that financial reality of not being able to afford it. And so you end up being in that survival mode. So having that grace or being in that space of healing takes effort, and it takes recognition as well. So
Yeah.
it's not something that people do naturally. I think you have to make a conscious choice a conscious decision and having professionals to help guide you through that process as well.
And so how do we start the normalizing if if the mental space has this responsibility to show grace or awareness for grace, how do we start normalizing the post event?
I think, as statistics would have it, one in two or one in three relationships break down. And we have to start looking at what that represents. And I guess, how I say it to a lot of people these days is when you start going to work, you start looking at income protection. When you're an adult, you start looking for health insurance where you pay a premium to an insurance company. For one day, you may get sick and you may need that cataract or you may need that hip replacement. But we don't actually think about relationships as being the same, that one day we could break up. And I think that once we normalize that process and start putting it in place as something that is planned, and is accepted, and there's no shame around it. You don't get any shame for a hip replacement, or you
Yeah.
don't get any shame for a car accident. And I think we need to start treating as relationship breakdown as very similar to that, it's a life event as opposed to um, something that you may have control over. Because, essentially you can be an inactive participant, like you find out that the relationship was over, or you find that you both have changed and you're not on the same path anymore. So I think the sooner we accept that that is a possibility, then I think that helps us build.
So as you say that, my first instinct in my mind was, okay, so if I'm planning for failure, that's kind of like in my world, that would be a faith statement. But then I realized that thought and thought, well, if I pay for insurance, medical health insurance, and I don't get a hip replacement, I don't beat myself over the head because I haven't paid insurance for
No,
said.
you don't. Yeah, look, I think if anything at all, it gives you the awareness that, hey, if you can identify that there's certain stages that really puts the relationship under pressure, I think we become an active person to sort of like start thinking, well, I know that that pressure is going to be there. How do I combat that? And how do I prevent that from happening? Like that if you eat too much chocolate or too much carbs, it's not good on the waistline.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so we make active, conscious decisions, say, okay, well, these are preventable situations. How do I actually um, eat it in moderation or eat it for special occasions? And I think that's the same with relationships. Once you start identifying that this is a possibility, what are some of the things that you can do to help the relationship, um, to protect that relationship so that it doesn't go down that path?
And so if you have this awareness early enough in the piece, is there any research or in your experience, does it equip the participants of the relationship to be more intentional? Does it produce a better result long term? I guess is what I'm trying to shoot at. Is there any data to support that?
I don't think there is. I don't think there is. And like if you actually asked me this question 20 years ago, I would even say, the people who, prenups are probably a good example. Prenups really sort of like say, well, this is my money, this is your money, whatever we build moving forward, and you can actually determine that, right? And 20 years ago, if somebody asked me, would you sign a prenup? And I'd probably say, well, no,
Yeah,
because the whole thing about marriages is merging of things and
that's right.
building things together and stuff like that. But I think that the people who've actually done prenups, or in Australia we call them binding financial agreements, they're probably the smart ones because
Yeah.
they are going in aware and um, and look, life changes and you can adjust those changes as you go along. But I think we really need to normalize that language a little bit more and just so that, like, I mean, I have this conversation with even accountants is a good one. You know, when you go into business with somebody, you do your quarterly BASs, which check
Yeah.
on the financial status of your business on an ongoing basis, and you have the annual tax returns, right? To see if the business is profitable and is it going in the right direction before you make further investments into the business. I just don't think we do that enough in relationships.
Yeah.
And I think that if we actually take a step back and say, do a regular health check with relationships, I think it might change the trajectory of a lot of
Yeah.
relationships.
If your name is Split Happens, which is
Yes.
a wonderful name, I must
Thank
say,
you.
it
Thank
put a
you.
smile on my face. Um, I guess then the question is if I am doing the BAS and the annual tax return evaluation of my relationships, will split happen?
The aim is for it not to happen. Um, I think that if I could spend more money on on saving relationships, I think that would probably be better. You know, like I think that if we can actively do things, and I'm working on a couple of courses to deliver for people, and one is relationship CPR,
Yeah,
things that people can actually do when they start feeling the drifting apart,
yeah,
things that they can actually do. And the other course that I've actually been delivering is the ABCs of good men becoming great partners. And I mean, I can only speak it from a woman's point of view. I know the pressure points that women feel as they're going through their different stages of life, you know, when they've got children that they're raising, the perimenopause. There's been a huge discussion on our changes in hormones and how that can actually lead to a lot of breakdowns.
yeah,
And I think bringing that awareness so that men can see and support their partners and their wives in relationships is an important conversation we need to have.
yeah,
Um, and so I think prevention is better. But if it does get to that stage where split does happen, that we've done everything that we can possibly have within our power to protect the relationships
yeah.
from that unit that you've jointly created.
And so, in your experience, then, Naomi, the so I can speak from the context of my experience, and this is only my experience. I don't have any reference beyond that. But I know in my second marriage, I was aware of my faux pas in my first one, which made it intrinsically easier and better the second time round. Um, is that is that a common trend? And these kind of courses that you talk about, is that the bridging gap that goes, hey, Rodney, before you burn the bridge, have you considered so that,
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, like when people come to me and they start saying, "Oh, I'm thinking of separating from my partner," I'll go through the checks and say, is it tell me a little bit about it, we explore where they're at right now. If they haven't, because some people they don't know what they don't know, and
yeah,
sometimes they like to contemplate the possibility of separating. Sometimes people come to me and they look at, they think that the grass is greener on the other side.
yeah, well, this is the,
He is not doing X, Y, and Z. She is not doing X, Y, and Z. And I think that if I go out there, I'll find somebody who will do that for me. And that's not the reality in a lot of
yeah,
times. And second marriages and second time rounds, the statistics are higher in divorce rates in second marriages and third
really,
marriages. I'm not sure if that, but I think that it comes back to the individual and how much awareness they have on their relationships and on themselves as well. My marriage ended suddenly. My husband at the time ended the relationship. And at the time, there was a lot of shock, there was a lot of anger, and there was a lot of what if. But, the more I sat in it and the more I did reflect on it, I knew. I
Yeah.
knew we weren't in a good place. There were the signs. Um, how it was handled, yes, it could have been better,
Yeah.
but I identified the key areas where it just wasn't right, but you push through it because you think if you push through the pain, it will get better. And I think the thing that we didn't do well was we didn't address the big hairy elephant.
Yeah.
It wasn't just the white elephant, it was just like the hairy
Big,
elephant.
big elephant.
Yeah, and I this time round I've repartnered. We talk about a lot of those things. And I think as you become older, you identify, what are your trigger points. Um, I know that in situations where I've actually said to my partner, if I say this or if I start doing this, I don't want you to come and fix it. I want you to just listen. And when I've finished, just come and give me a hug.
Yeah.
And that's all, and I just think that as we get older, we give ourselves tools or we start to identify, but it does all those things take work. And if you're aware of that going into the next relationship, I think that the second relationship or the third relationship has more hope because you've grown and you've learned. But I think if you haven't done the work and jumped right into the next relationship, which a lot of people do, because they're trying to find somebody to complement them
Yeah.
and try somebody to come and rescue them or someone to, you know, a lot of those romantic movies, you complete me, whole
Yeah.
load of Hollywood bollocks. Um,
Oh, come on, Naomi.
I know, but we still watch them, right? But yeah, like I think that if we actually have those real conversations, how would you like, and I do it a lot with my partner now. How do you want me to react when you do this? Um, and how I'd like you to react if I do this.
Yeah.
That's really important
Yeah.
because it not only creates that safe space, it gives the other person security to think that if you have a flip out, it's not about them.
Yeah,
It's
that's
what
right.
you're going through internally.
Yeah, that's
Sometimes
right.
we spend so much focus, like if you react a certain way, I might say, well, what have I done? What have I done? But sometimes it's just an internal thing.
And I've wondered, and maybe you might know the answer to this. You look back at the older generation who've been married 60 years, and when I have the conversation with them, not all of them, but a big chunk of them are married 60 years. But I don't know that I would subscribe to that, the joy within said 60-year transaction. And so there's this tension between would a mentor be helpful, who's maybe the lens is we don't divorce, so we just grin and bear it, or do I go, there's a new model in town and it's not good or bad, it's just different. Where does where do I land in that situation?
Oh, look, that's a tricky one. Like in 60 years ago, because I'm Vietnamese, and there's a lot of cultural things too. People used to marry within their village or within their communities. And so there is a lot of, your parents might have married because, their parents knew each other, or it was arranged in some cultures. Um, and marriage, you had to, like, people used to see a minister or religious leader to go through the values. And so there's a whole heap of things that was different 50, 60 years ago. And I guess for women, a lot of the times they felt that that was the model that they subscribed to. They didn't have the freedom to go work. and have financial security. So it was hard to leave relationships. So that has changed quite a fair bit. We don't have those outside influences. These days people get married because they fall in love and they're young and they can do it quite easily. It doesn't really rely on family support a lot or religious influences or anything like that. And of course, women have greater independence financially these days. Having said that, I think yeah. So the I guess the model has changed
Yeah,
and it's evolved. I think the important thing for us moving forward is that that is the new model. Whether it's improved or not, we don't know.
yeah,
But we as a society have supported a lot of women to go back into the workforce to become more independent, become more financially, yeah,
savvy.
independent to earn their own money and have a career and so forth. But I don't think that we as a society have supported our men to parent more and to be more involved with, you know, I think dads these days have actually changed a lot more in sense that, they become more active in their children's sports and stuff like that. But on the day-to-day functions, I think we're still falling behind with supporting our men. And so I think we need to support and to support our men for that because the mental health situation in men tend to deteriorate quite significantly once they divorce or find themselves in separation.
Yeah, that's right.
So yeah, I think we need to change with how the family unit has evolved.
When we consider this changing modality or model, what are we losing? So you reference this idea of sitting under a sort of faith-based discussion and considering the impact of this relationship to you and things of how's the money going to work, who wants kids, who doesn't want kids, all those sort of big questions gets unpacked, and there's a bit of a learning curve before you walk down the aisle. I
Yep.
don't know that that's a reality anymore. So is there other things like that that we've lost in the new modality?
As much as our society has developed to make us more connected, we're actually less
Yes.
connected. And I think that once the people whose relationship breaks down and that do recover a lot faster, they're a lot, they've got a lot of support network around them. Their friendship, their support networks, their mothers groups. And again, that's very women centric as well. You
Yeah,
know, we have situations where after you have children, there's mothers groups. And those mothers groups, if that unit clicks, they might involve the dads, but there
yeah,
isn't a dads group, you know?
that's right.
There isn't a dads group. I mean, I see it in the northern beaches in New South Wales where a, a group of men have actually sort of like taken kids out and they do weekly walks as
Yeah,
a group and they've got different dads. So it's almost like a
yeah,
dad morning walk or something like that.
mm,
And I love that. And I think that that should be our focus. That should
yeah,
be and that has lost, once relationship breaks down, I see a lot of men feeling really displaced because they've always defaulted to going out with whatever event that the wife or the partner has organized. And we're
yeah,
talking hetero relationships, and
yeah, yeah,
it's very similar in gay and lesbian relationships as well. There's always one party who's more organizing those things. And I've got two young men now, they're 21 and they're 19 and they've got partners. And I always encourage them, both the boys and their girlfriends, make sure you spend time with your friends.
yeah, that's right.
Just
Yeah,
don't, there's some people who become so entrenched in the relationship, and then the relationship breaks down. They go, "Oh, Naomi,
I'm an island.
what do you do up to?"
Yeah,
And that's really important that the relationships are maintained, um, friendships are maintained, or
yeah.
the sports that they do is maintained because that's the support network.
Yeah, I did an episode recently with Michael Ray, and he talks about a story where he's a single dad, and his daughter does ballet, and no dad's allowed in the change room,
Mm.
and he's like, there isn't a mom. I'm it. So what do I do? Do I send my daughter alone into the change room on this big event that she's nervous about? Or do I fight the system to have a right to go? It's messy. It doesn't,
It is,
whichever
yeah.
approach he applies is messy.
I saw it. Was it an article on the weekend or something? There was an uproar about a dad taking their daughter into the men's toilet to go to the bathroom.
Yeah,
But on the flip side, you see so many women taking their sons going into the
yeah,
bathroom and
that's right.
nobody bats
No
an eyelid.
resident. Yeah.
So I think to a certain extent, we have very double standards.
Well, I mean, I think we do. I think it's in these conversations. More of these conversations are helpful. And you referenced awareness earlier in the chat, and that is a common theme through all, certainly out of the podcast. Yeah, at Your Truth Explored, where awareness carries a significant benefit to choice. The
Mm,
problem is it stops at choice, and then the application sits with me beyond choice.
yep.
So there is a responsibility there, but if I'm aware, at least I'm one step forward.
Mm,
Now, Naomi, one of my favorite subjects is this idea of self-love and my capacity to have any value for relationship or meaning or purpose or destiny is linked in this ability to have value for myself. Now, is that a trend? When people are coming to see you and the chips are on the table, we're negotiating the messy bits. How is self-love in those scenarios?
I think it comes back to there's this slide actually, and I might send it to you so that you can have a copy of it. It's got the four quadrants and it highlights the hormones that you can do and the active things that you can do. So when people come out of the relationship, it's a lot sometimes. It's if he had done this or if she had done this, then we wouldn't be in this situation. Or the flip side is if I could have done this, maybe it wouldn't have fallen apart.
Yeah,
And there's a lot of those questions that people go through. And you don't necessarily find the answers because it depends on what the other party does and how they
yeah,
respond.
yeah,
So I go back to a lot to the individual and I challenge them a lot, sometimes a little bit too much. And I ask them to think, well, what is it that you want? And what is it that you're seeking with your life? For a question, if you asked a 3-year-old what they want, they'll all say, oh, an ice cream or a chocolate
yeah.
or whatever.
They know exactly what it
They
is.
know exactly. And I want it now, right? And
Yeah.
even if you say,
What's
they
taking so
say,
long?
yeah, that's right. But if you ask an adult that, they really struggle. They really, really struggle because we've taught or we've evolved in such a way that when you think about self-love, you're actually being selfish.
That's right. That's the big hurdle, eh?
And you don't want to be selfish. I don't want to be selfish.
Yeah,
But at the end of the day, I need to know that if I'm not okay, I can't, help those around me and I can't be of any service to anybody.
yeah,
And it's it's almost like you have to relearn it as an adult.
yeah,
We have to learn that taking time out to exercise for yourself decreases your stress. increases your feel-good hormones,
Yeah,
increases your muscle mass, which is so important as we age. And doing all those things give us the feel-good outlook for ourselves, and then we can manage the everyday situation, you
yeah,
know. And yeah, it's constant. And for mums, they're the worst,
yeah,
I
yeah.
find.
Of taking self-care, absolutely.
Oh, like it's just, I'll go to sleep when I've done this, when
Yeah,
I put the load of washing on. I'll do my hair when blah blah blah. I'll
yeah,
go to the gym to make sure that,
yeah,
even nights out when they go out to dinner to have dinners with friends or what have you. It's always I'll get the dinner ready and then I'll go out with my friends.
yeah.
And we really need to step back and take that time to say you need to do it for yourself. You need to take that time out for yourself.
Is that a learned behavior? Because we have this same conversation in commerce where we go, I believe there's a commercial value in healthy self-care. Most business owners will roll their eyes at that statement and go, here's another thing I got to pay for it. But I think if you do self-care really well for your staff intentionally, the output of that staff member is so much greater. They don't leave so much faster. And so the commercial value actually translates to dollars and cents. But we've
Mm,
got to get past the eye rolling part to,
yeah.
to actually get to the benefit. So is this just another byproduct of that learned behavior then where we go, oh, yeah, I should care for myself so that my relationship will benefit. But it's like I have to care for myself at work, and I got to give grace to everybody. And
Somewhere along the line, I think the message just got that if you take on more, you're mentally stronger, you're mentally tougher, you can
mm,
do it more. And so we end up being, I'm stronger because I've looking after X amount of people at work and I've got families and I'm doing
yeah,
birthday cakes on my own. And
yeah,
because I'm strong, like we believe that we are mentally strong because people think that, or society has created this fake belief that you can only be strong if you take on all these challenges and you do
yeah,
it with ease and you put it on Instagram and everything's
yeah,
fine, right? But the reality is we can't. There's not enough time in the day, there's not enough expertise in it,
yeah,
and we've just got to learn to take a step back and go, in order for me to achieve things, I have to look after myself first because we just don't have enough headspace.
yeah,
And then start going, okay, well, I'm not good at that. That's where I actually need help, and that's where I need to ask for help. And that mental load that a lot of people talk about, it's unseen. And if you have a nervous breakdown, sometimes you're
but when you
weak.
see it, it's too late.
Yeah, you're weak, or and that's the whole stigma around mental health, isn't it?
Yeah,
Like you can't keep your stuff together. If we really identify it, like, and I do go back a lot to health because I was a pharmacist. If you do have somebody who is diabetic, they have an insulin problem, you go and treat that, and we need to treat our mental health just as much as our physical health and everything that goes in between. So that's, yeah, we just really have to, not so this whole idea of strength, I think it
yeah.
needs to be thrown out.
So Naomi, if you've got three categories, you've got I'm setting off on my marriage journey. I've got it's all falling apart version of my, and I'm post it's all fallen apart.
It's all fallen, okay.
What's the golden nugget you offer to each one of those three people in the journey?
Look, uh, people generally have children, so I'll go down the path of with children. I always ask them, if everything blows up tomorrow, what is the one thing you'd save? And they'll always say, I want to have a good relationship with the kids. They're not going to say the boat. They're not going to say I want to go on more trips every
Yeah.
year. They always look at the kids. So that's usually a first starting point. So then um, I always ask them, what is it that you're actually doing today for your kids? And that mum will say, oh, I've done all their lunches and the care for the children, their well-being. Dad will always say, I financially provided for the children and I take them to soccer and I do this, blah, blah, blah. So there's always a role people play in that. So then we look at the roles that they can still do those things, but it's going to be slightly different. And it's going to be evening up a little bit, and it's going to take them a lot out of their comfort zones. So we do those things, we identify what they are, and we help um, stabilize the situation. And the thing that I ask people to do is I always ask them, put your ex aside, because there's always, it's mixed feelings.
Yeah.
Sometimes, it could be animosity towards the other side, but I always ask them, put that aside for a second. And I always ask them, how can you be your child's superhero so that in 10 years' time or 15 years' time, we have this conversation and I ask your kids, what is the thing that mum or dad did that kept your life the same? Um, and it gets people thinking a lot because then they look at how they can maintain that relationship and that stability for their children from this point in time so that we don't have that, the fracture is less.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that when we fast forward to 10, 15 years' time, because I always tell them, I speak to people who these days, who are adults and they've separated. And there's people who are mixed bags, like the people who go, oh my God, my parents went through this divorce and it was the worst thing. And I found myself bouncing from house to house and then I speak to other people and I go, oh, my parents were actually better once they divorced,
Yes, you hear that a bit.
and it was really an easy transition and for people who are stuck in that fight, I always tell them that story and do you want that adult to be, oh, mum did everything she could or dad did everything that he could to keep my life stable? Or do you want that kid, in 15, 20 years' time to say, oh my God, my parents were
Yeah.
nightmares.
Yeah.
So that always changes the conversation because it, it it comes back to how much we value relationships.
Yeah.
And we really value it more once we've lost it as well,
Yeah.
or once it's fractured.
I think if you're listening as well, I just want to encourage you that these significant events aren't an indicator that we're broken or that we failed. Bad things happen to good people
Yeah,
is a fact. You
yeah.
know, the best guy out there is something bad's going to happen. It's kind of how we look at that and where we go with that information afterwards. So if you're in that boat, you can still be a good guy or a good lady, and you can work this thing out. And reaching out for help is not failure. It's one of the best things you can do.
Mm.
So be encouraged to do that.
I usually call them speed humps. Like if you go through life and these challenges come up, they're like little speed humps to slow you down, get you to reflect a little bit more.
Yeah.
Don't want to be racing over the speed humps and then, the suspension's not working.
Naomi, if I am starting to navigate, or at what point do I engage somebody's services like yours? Where in the journey am I navigating your services?
At any particular point is okay. The sooner the better. yeah, if you're thinking about separating, or if you have feelings that the situation is going to end up in separation, it's a really good point to start seeing me then. Um, because we are able to map out your situation up until this point. There's less fallout, and you become more informed in the
Yeah,
situation. Once people have separated, um, I'd like for them to see me before they engage in lawyers. And again, it's about making sure that they meet all their obligations in terms of what paperwork they need to have ready um, before they seek legal advice. And it's more about practical points on things that they can do to stabilize their situation and understand what they're heading into.
yeah,
I think once separation happens, it's a bit like I'll do an analogy for renovations this time.
sure.
When people are thinking about separating, they don't know what they're getting into. And so speaking to me would be speaking to an architect or a draftsperson just to give the scope of the work. And that's all it is, right?
Yeah,
If you're in the middle of separation and you've got lawyers already, it's like coming to see the architect once you've yourself dug a hole and you don't have council approval. And
and there's
and then
issues.
you go, oh, poo, what do I do here? Um, so I don't really recommend that part. But having said that, I still help people in that area because then we look at what are some of the ways that we can actually improve that situation at any particular stage. Yeah.
And what if I'm coming just to do a health check? Go, hey, I don't want to use your services down the future. Help me do that well. Is that a thing?
Yes.
Is that an option?
Yeah, yeah, we can do that as well. We definitely can do that. We can do relationship coaching as well. And I've had some people who've come to me themselves or as a couple, and we go through why they're sitting in that space of no connection, and we look at things that they definitely can do for each other, do for themselves, do for each other, to help navigate their relationship as well. So we do definitely do that.
Yeah.
Um, I wish more people would see me in that point,
I think
you know.
so too. I think, yeah. And is it again? We're back at it's a byproduct of awareness that it's even an option to go have that conversation.
I think so many people think, and rightly or wrongly, I'm not sure, but men have don't really want to see a psychologist
Yeah,
or a therapist or, because they think there's, I don't know
something
what
wrong
they
with me.
think's going to
They
happen,
think there's something wrong with them. That's what they
right?
think.
But when we do coaching, it's very different because I give them practical things that they can do.
Yeah,
And, it could be something so little and really identifying active roles that they can do because men want to support their families,
yeah.
right? But sometimes women do, love to do a lot of things around the house and it's their way and all that stuff. So we talk a lot about relationship dynamics and how they solve certain issues. Um, yeah, so it's really interesting.
That's awesome. And so, if I want to engage your services, how do I do that?
Yeah, so you can just look me up, Naomi Cao. I've got the wrong finger there, Naomi
Yeah,
Cao. If you look at my website is naomicao.com.
yeah,
So and I'm on all social media, Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, TikTok.
yeah.
If they look up Naomi Cao, they will be able to find me.
It'll be. Well, Naomi, I thank you for your time, and I think it's a great, timely conversation. And I hope that if you're listening, that the awareness piece is stirred up significantly enough for you to at least consider the possibility that there is help out there. So, thank you
Yeah.
for your time, Naomi.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for listening to today's episode of Your Truth Explored. If today's episode resonated with you, please take a moment to follow the podcast and share it with someone who might benefit from the conversation. Your support helps these messages reach the people who need them most. If you'd like to explore your own truths more deeply, you're welcome to connect with me at yourtruthservices.com.au about coaching or counseling bookings. Also available on that website is our other resources such as music, books, and videos. Until next time, take care and stay connected to your truth.